What is going on, everybody? I am Chris Raybon. Welcome to another edition of our Super Bowl 60 player prop release shows. We're going to have Nick Giffen and Grant Niefer up later on, but for this episode, I am joined by Sean Koerner, the odds maker. You know him very well. Also, am joined by Matthew Friedman, analyst at Fantasy Life. You can find him at MadF, the Oracle. Friedman, what is going on? How you doing? And how do you see the Super Bowl playing out before we get into our props?
Yeah, doing good. Awesome to be back on the show with you guys. I will say, I must have missed my invite to Propapalooza. I got bumped to the second stage, it's fine. It's fine. Just got to tweet through it. The good news is, I'm not in the Epstein files. Load off. I mean, I was breaking a sweat for a little bit, worrying that just somewhere in the world was some guy named Matthew Friedman who happened to have his name in the Epstein files, and people would be like, "Oh, that must be Matt F. the Oracle." So at least dodge that bullet. But the Super Bowl, I would love to hear how you guys think how the Super Bowl is going to play out. I've got the projection model at Fantasy Life. I have this at Seahawks -5. I think there are 3.5 points is what I have separating these two just in terms of power ratings. And then there are the other factors that kind of get put on top of that. A little more rest for the Seahawks, not nearly as much travel. The 6:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff time is more in the Seahawks' natural window than the window for the Patriots. So all of those things just kind of push the projection a little bit more towards the Seahawks. But then I just ask myself, what does my gut say? And man, when I see so many, literally everyone at ESPN betting on the Seahawks, it just makes me want the Patriots. And I have respect for Mike Vrabel in that sort of like Mike Tomlin as an underdog kind of way. Vrabel as an underdog of at least 3 points, 29, 16, and 2 against the spread throughout his career. Underdogs in the Super Bowl, for years, going back, underdogs of this much are 12, 2, and 2 against the spread. The Seahawks defense, I know people will talk about how the Patriots defense hasn't really played anyone. The Seahawks defense hasn't really played all that great of a slate of quarterbacks either. And then when they have, playing Matt Stafford, they got shredded. Like, I'm not saying the Seahawks defense is bad. It's one of the best in the league, but like, it can be exploited by a good quarterback, and the Patriots have a good quarterback. And so I just kind of look at all of this and I think the Patriots have the better quarterback. I think they have the more proven offensive coordinator. No disrespect to Clint Kubiak, but it's like, oh, hey, he's been hired as a head coach. Josh McDaniels did that twice. And even though he was so bad at that job, he was still awesome enough as an offensive play caller to get rehired in that position multiple times. I think the Patriots have the more proven head coach, and I think they have the more underappreciated defense. I think that Pat's defense, when it's fully healthy, and it's fully healthy right now, is, up there, not quite with the Seahawks, but not all that far from it. So you put all that together and it's like my numbers point towards the Seahawks, but man, like in my gut, I want to bet on the Patriots.
So first of all, if you're talking about the Epstein files, I don't think load off and sweat are the key terms you want to use right after those. But that notwithstanding, yeah, I think McDonald's right there with Vrabel. Honestly, I think he's a better defensive coach. I think he solved Shanahan 3 times. I think McVay was just kind of on that level, and it was like a classic chess match that McVay kind of won, but the Seahawks still won the game. I mean, if Woolen doesn't commit that penalty, it looks a lot different in that one too. But Koerner, any thoughts on the game before we get into the props?
No, I mean, I'm pretty much in line with the 4.5 and the, 46 for the total, but there's, 500 prop markets. So I've been pretty occupied with those. One thing that, like, I haven't seen much people talk about, but Robert Spillane really does seem like a game time decision. So I've been kind of monitoring his status. I think he returned a limited practice today, but I think he's going to be key into limiting, Kenneth Walker and the Seahawks run game. And then, that's going to help limit their play action. So I think he's like a key injury that I've been kind of monitoring to see if he's going to be active. That could lead me one way or the other, but I think it's pretty fair. But based on all, my props right now, I'm probably leaning or want, a Seattle leading game script. So, as of now, I lean Seattle -4.5.
Yeah, I think the game kind of points under. I mean, I think both defenses can have success here. I think my worry with the Patriots is just that they played a bunch of these other, top tier defenses already, and it hasn't looked good. It hasn't looked good. It's just that, CJ Stroud puked his brains out. The Broncos had a backup quarterback, and Justin Herbert always pukes his brains out in the playoffs. So, if Sam Darnold happens to be the best quarterback they faced, go figure. But we'll see. We'll see how that unfolds. And we're gonna get into our props. We're gonna give 3 each, so that'll be 9 total props for you on this episode. The most important thing to know, these props do move quickly. They can move quickly. So we'll be dropping quick slip links in the chat on YouTube and Playbook. We'll be threading the show on Twitter with Playbook links as well. Click those. It'll take you right to the prop with the sports book of your choosing, so you can quickly and easily make that bet. With that said, let's get to it. Friedman, pick number 1. Where are we going?
This is the most Friedman pick that anyone could have come up with. It's like, hey, Matt, can you find the most irrelevant player in this game and then find a prop in the market for him and take the under on that? And so that's what I'm doing to lead off the show. George Holani receptions under 1.5. And this is available plus 116 at FanDuel. But positive odds on the under across the market. I know that Holani last game, ended up having some decent playing time, but it's Kenneth Walker, in the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going, and Kenneth Walker on his own is actually, I think, at least an average receiving back, maybe above average. So I don't think, Clint Kubiak in his final game with the team is going to be like, you know what time it is? It's George Holani time. Let's get some dump offs to this guy. I think it's going to be the Kenneth Walker show. And when it's not going to Kenneth Walker, I think it's JSN. And when Holani's in there, I think he's mainly going to be someone who's just giving a breather to the guy who's clearly better than him. I have this projected around 1. And so I would bet this, into like the negative numbers, like minus 130, minus 135. I don't think it's going to get there in the market. I think, where we are is pretty much where it's going to be, but easily this is one of my favorite bets on the board.
It's kind of a head scratcher for me last game that Holani was used so much as a receiving back. I guess to play devil's advocate, the one thing I'd say, Seahawks Clint Kubiak might not feed George Holani in the Super Bowl, but would the Raiders head coach feed some irrelevant running back in the Super Bowl? Maybe. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Koerner, where are we going? Pick number 1.
Well, Raybon, we finally have some punter props up, so I got to go with my first punter prop. And I will say, this is on DraftKings. They did an excellent job this year. There's not much value, but I did find one I am showing value on, and it's Michael Dixon. So the Seahawks punter, for those that don't know him, his longest punt to go under 57.5 yards at minus 115. He only has 4 punts this year that have cleared this number. I could probably stop there, but this is the only time of year I get to talk about punter props, so I'm going to keep going. But Dixon is one of the best punters in the game, and he could absolutely clear this number if he wanted to. But if you look over his career, he has made a concerted effort to increase his hang time the past couple of seasons. The first 6 seasons of his career, he had a very low hang time, a very high return rate. But the last couple seasons, he's opting for higher punts, sacrificing some distance for, less returns. So I think facing, a very good punt returner in Marcus Jones, he's going to continue to do that, punt the ball higher, and try to prevent returns that way. So I also went back and I saw the 4 punts he punted for 58 or more yards. 2 of them were excellent. He just booted it. They were backed up deep in their, own side of the field, and he just boomed it. And those went 58 yards. The other one took a great bounce, rolled an extra 5-10 yards, went 58 yards. His only other punt that went 58 or more yards went 60 yards, and it was Chimere DK who returned it for a touchdown. So he learned the hard way that he probably shouldn't be punting it too far with his coverage. So I think he's going to try to keep it under 58 yards, all of his punts here. And I have his median closer to 56, but that's a very valuable yard and a half. So I have him staying under 57.5 about 60% of the time.
Yeah, I remember when the matchup was first set, I jokingly asked Stucky, like, is anybody going to punt to anyone in this game because you have two of the most dangerous
Yeah,
punt returners.
Shahid on the
Yeah,
other side
yeah.
too.
So I could definitely
Yeah.
get behind that one.
Yeah, and I will
All right.
say some added context just for whatever reason Levi's Stadium I had about 2 yards under expected, so could be a ton of noise, but seems like it's not like an above average punting venue. Maybe that's due to the electric substation, who knows? But and the weather doesn't seem like it's going to be an issue. There's not that high of winds. Sometimes high winds can help if it's like coming from behind, so there doesn't look like there's going to be that much wind. So I trust me, I tried to find a reason why this won't hit and I couldn't find one.
Yeah, it's probably because there's like a 2% chance the punter will just break his ankle and be out for the year or something like that.
Yeah,
Judging by the 49ers injuries over these past decade or so. But all right, so Friedman has George Alani under receptions. Koerner is going with Michael Dixon under 50. What 50? You said 58 and a half, 56 and a half.
57 and a half. Oh, I wish it was 58 and a half, but yeah,
Oh, yeah.
57
Okay.
and a half.
Sorry,
Yeah.
57 and a half. Okay. I'm gonna roll with for my first prop, Demario Douglas, Pop Douglas over 9.5 receiving yards. And this is the fun thing about the Super Bowl. I think like some of these, kind of smaller receiving markets and rushing markets that move a lot, regular season, they're a little more stable here, so you can kind of find some value and not be scared that it's just going to run away on you. But Pop Douglas, he plays a ton in 1-1 personnel. He's not really playing as much in the other formations because he's undersized, and they have Matt Collins, who they like blocking, Stephon Diggs, who they like catching the ball, and then Kayshon Boutte, who they like going on those deep low percentage routes. So Douglas is the fourth receiver, but remember, New England 17-3 this year hasn't had to play a lot of 1-1 personnel, hasn't trailed a ton, and Douglas about a 2% increase in target market share when the team is tied or trailing in games compared to when they're leading this season. So I think Douglas, especially with Seattle being kind of a zone heavy team, teams have tried to target their linebackers when they can, and they don't play a ton of linebackers because they got all those safeties. But when they do, I think Douglas will be a guy that could get a matchup, on early downs if they bring him in, and try to do it that way. But I don't see either team having success on the ground. So I do think either way, Douglas will get a few more opportunities just route wise, regardless of the game script. But I expect New England to trail more 1-1 personnel, more Pop Douglas, and he's been more of a downfield guy this year too. So some years, it would be tougher for him, and he might need 2 receptions to clear this. This year, I think he probably clears it in 1 more often than not. So I give you Pop Douglas over 9.5 receiving yards. That is our first wave of props. We got 2 more each, so 6 more coming up. Real quick before we go any further, we have a very important announcement to make. You may want to be sitting down for this because it's a doozy in honor of Super Bowl 60. We're giving you $60 off a year of Action Pro. We're all going to be dropping more picks leading up to the Super Bowl. And with Action Pro, you get real-time alerts when myself, Sean, Kyle, anybody on the Action Network squad drops a pick. You don't have to wait those 30 minutes when the line might have moved already. All of that plus real money and bet percentages, access to our pro player prop projections, and more. That's $60 off for Super Bowl 60. Just head to actionnetwork.com/pro right now to take advantage. Friedman, where are you going for pick number 2, Super Bowl 60 props? What we got?
So I like, just generally speaking, Ramondre Stevenson overs. And, I'd kind of love to know how you guys are interpreting the backfield split that we saw with the Patriots in the AFC Championship, where Ramondre Stevenson played, I believe, like 94% of the snaps. Just kind of like unreal utilization in terms of what we had seen previously. Given that, I would say Trayvon Henderson is more of like the home run hitter within that backfield. But Ramondre Stevenson just does like the kind of little stuff that is going to keep him on the field. And Henderson is still a rookie. And so, question of whether that is sticky and we see Stevenson once again dominate the backfield, or if we see Henderson have more utilization than what we saw in the AFC Championship game. I lean a little bit more towards maybe we don't see Stevenson have again like 94% of the snaps, but maybe 85% of the snaps. But I think it is a Ramondre Stevenson focused game plan for the Patriots. And so that puts me on the overs. And I would just say kind of whatever the number is for any prop, my projections are probably going to be over it. So if it's, 49 and a half as the rushing yardage mark, I'm on the over. If it's, rushing attempts of 14 and a half, I'm on the over. If it's scrimmage yards of 76 and a half, 77 and a half, I'm on the over. If it's the anytime touchdown, which, right now is plus 145, I'm, projecting better odds than that. So kind of whatever it is, pick which one you might like the most. And I would say just put that stuff into some SGPs. But, just for the sake of kind of having a number out there, I'll say the anytime touchdown at plus 145. I like that one. I don't know if I'd say I like it the most, but I certainly like that one. And that is one that I would want to include in SGPs that I create. My fair number for that, I have it minus 118. I think it's likelier than not that he scores a touchdown in this game. So I see plenty of value at any time touchdown for Stevenson at plus 145.
Yeah, this is the toughest. I think, Koerner and I, when we were doing the player projections, like this was the toughest kind of thing, situation in the Super Bowl to project. I know, like personally, I have Ramondre under fourth quarter rushing yards because I do expect the Seahawks to be up, and I do think a lot of his usage over the last couple of games was related to in the Denver game was like the three handoffs and punch strategy. And then the other game, I think Travion had like a 10-3 carry advantage, and then Stevenson took like the last 14 of 16 in the Houston game. But Koerner, I think your first bet was a Stevenson bet. So I want to get your take on this before we jump to your prop.
Yeah. So Freeman, you're welcome for that 49 and a half. My first bet was under 56 and a half. And then it went down to 51 and a half. Everyone's yelling at me. But I think we could thread the needle here. I think there's like a 10% chance he finishes in that range because I do agree. I think the volume's going to be there. Although last game was, he had 9 carries in the fourth quarter. They were up against Jared Stidham in the snow. I just think they didn't trust Henderson. So I think Ramondre is going to see a big workload early. That's why I also took his most rushing yards to be in the first quarter at plus 290. Those are terrible odds. But if he is struggling, which I think this is going to be the best run defense he's faced all season, if he does struggle, I think that's when they do get Henderson in there just to get some of that upside. But I do agree with like his receiving upside is massive. Raybon and I were talking. He's a sneaky bet to lead the game in receiving yards because he's a rare running back where his A dot's like 5 yards downfield. He's had a couple deep balls, so he's kind of in a unique spot at running back where he could catch a couple long ones. That might be the way to kind of attack this defense. So I could see that being an extension of the run game too. So yeah, he's very tricky to project. I am projecting his workload to stay pretty high, but the efficiency to be much lower here.
Yeah, like I could see like an 8-catch, 93-yard game for Ramondre, maybe a bunch of 2-minute stuff, or come from behind stuff like that. Because again, I think you're trying to get on the Seahawks linebackers as much as possible, and if not, you're just going to go underneath all that coverage because it's going to be, I think, really good. So I do like his receiving quite a bit. Okay, Koerner, your prop number 2. Where are we going?
All right, this one's a fun one, but this is on DraftKings. Where the hell is this? Yeah, like game special teams props. So this is a kickoff prop. I'm going with under 3.5 touchbacks here at minus 125. And this is one of those props I just started diving in. I thought, I'd probably see some fair. I'd agree at the line and move on. But the more I dug in, the more I loved it. So I spent like an hour looking at this. So you guys are stuck with this one. But this number is already pretty high because 80% of the games stayed under this. So we're already starting with a number that's pretty high. And both teams are going to have different approaches here when it comes to the kickoff. Jason Myers, he's kicks off for Seattle. Only 17% of his kickoffs went for a touchback, which is below league average of 21%. And the Patriots, if you look, they've had like 10 different guys return kicks this year. They haven't figured out who their kick returner is yet. So I don't think he's going to be too scared just kicking it off to them in the landing zone. I think any touchbacks he has will be an accident. So I'm not worried about him. But Andy Borregales kicking off to Rashid Shaheed, that's obviously the main concern here. And Borregales was above league average. 26% of his kickoffs were touchbacks. So, he could opt to kick more touchbacks here. But I was looking at Shaheed's, returns this year. 25 of his 50 kickoff returns went for a touchback. So that's a ridiculous 50% rate. But I saw that 22 of those kickoffs were by the Rams. So he faced the Rams here, not 2 times because he was on the Seahawks, not 3 times because they faced him in the playoffs, but 4 times because his final game with the Saints, that was the only game they used him as a kickoff
Unreal.
returner. I don't know why. But the Rams kicked 5 touchbacks in that game. So the Rams were responsible for 90% of his touchbacks this year. If you look at all other non-Rams games, teams opted to, kick it off to him 15% of the time as a touchback. So take of that as you will, but he's pretty aggressive. If you kick it on the goal line or 1 or 2 yards in the end zone, he'll take it out. So you have to kick it 5 yards, back in the end zone. So I have this very aggressive with Borregales kicking it off into the end zone, 40% touchback rate, and I'm still showing a 63% chance this stays under. So I think the only way this goes over is if, the Patriots just go the Rams way and just say, we're not even going to mess with it. We're just going to kick it out of the back of the end zone every time. But I don't really see that happening. So needless to say, I love this bet.
That is unreal with the Rams. And I'm looking at it, and yeah, the Rams, it was like their party was like they had him, but then they dropped him right before that Seahawks game, and he wasn't kicking touchbacks, but then the guy they replaced him with, it was usually the punter, and he's 75% touchback rate. What the heck?
Yeah. It was the first kickoff of the game. Cardi was the kicker. Shaheed returned it 29 yards, and they said, screw it. The rest of the game, they just kicked off for a touchback. And it doesn't make sense, right? He returned it for 29 yards. So they were just letting him come out to the 35. And Shaheed's an excellent returner, but only 2 of his returns this year have gone for over 35 yards. They're both touchdowns, but I just don't get why a team would just kick it out of the back of the end zone, even to Shaheed. So again, that's kind of the only way this gets screwed.
Well, I mean, to your point, that was that Saints game that you're referring to was Joshua Cardi's last game with the Rams.
Right.
So then they just there was just a punter, and he just set 3 out of every 4 as a touchback with him. So yeah, like the Rams just act like special teams doesn't exist until it screws them, which it does all the time. But we digress. Speaking of the Rams, going with a former Ram under 3.5 receptions here, Cooper Kupp at minus 164. You can find this minus 165. He's been under in 12 of 18 this year, so 2/3. That's about minus 200 odds. I'm projecting 2.9 here. So, Cooper Kupp, he has kind of come alive a little bit in this postseason, but against the New England team that still been a very good defense, still I think will play a decent amount of man coverage. I know they're going to be focused on stopping JSN, but so is every defense, and I just think Cooper Kupp, this is the last game of the season. He's old. He's had 2 weeks. Everything's going to kind of stiffen up on him, his old age. And he's a blocker. That's what the number one reason they got him for. And also, I think there's a small but non-zero chance that Jake Bobo's been playing so well these last few games. Now, there's a choice you have to make if you want it, because Bobo's also a great blocker. There's a choice you have to kind of make if you want to get Bobo more playing time. And it's do you take Rashid Shaheed's speed off the field, or do you take Cooper Kupp off the field? It's been kind of a mix of both. More so, they've taken Shaheed off the field in these situations, but I think you start to see Kupp maybe lose a couple of snaps. He's topped out at around an 80% route rate in both of these playoff games, which is a bit lower than his regular season rate would be in the mid 80s. So I think there's a chance here that you could see, Kupp lose a couple of snaps on pass downs, to a guy like Jake Bobo, as well as just the fact that Kupp is not really a man beating type receiver. It's the most important game of the year. So I'm expecting right around 3 catches, but I think it's a lot higher of a chance that he doesn't get to 4 than he lands on 3 exactly or goes under. So give me the under 3.5 at -164. Again, I'd put the true odds closer to -200 on the dot. All right. Last one for each of us. Friedman, where are we going? Pick number 3.
I'm looking at Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I think there are lots of ways in which the Seahawks could look to get him the ball. And obviously, super dominant receiver, was number 1 in the league in target rate and leverage that into, a league high, almost 1,800 yards receiving. I think it's a situation where we see in the Super Bowl a lot of years, teams sort of empty the playbook. Like if they have players that they want to get the ball to, if they have plays they haven't used, it's like, hey, like there's no tomorrow. This is it. Let's get all of the plays in there. And I think that breeds a situation where Jackson Smith and Jigba obviously not only could have a really high target share, but he could get the ball on the ground as a runner. And so looking at the market, the number of rushing yards in this game for Jackson Smith and Jigba is 0.5, and it's heavily juiced to the over in terms of like plus 305 is what I see at DraftKings. And if I can get at really big odds, the possibility of JSN getting a carry and turning that into at least 1 yard in the game where the Seahawks probably want JSN touching the ball as much as possible. It just feels like something that I want to do. And I have this projected at, 0.4, in terms of the number of carries that he's going to get in this game. I think it's pretty much close to a coin flip in terms of whether he actually gets a carry. And then, all he has to do is just get 1 yard on that carry. Occasionally, especially if you're thinking of this as an end around, occasionally that guy will get tackled for like the 1 yard loss, but more often than not, he's turning that into like 2 to 5 yards. So this is, a little more of like I'm just kind of like, shooting from the hip and thinking, hey, does JSN get a carry in this, all important game? Yeah, I think he probably does. But I have this, projected, pretty much as a coin flip of him getting a carry. And so with that being the case, big plus odds for the over of 0.5 on the rushing yardage. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, I have JSN projected for exactly 1 rushing yard. So that would be a smash over. And I do think they try to get him the ball out, especially because Shaheed, they've been giving him the ball a lot. And in the last carry he had, like, I think it went for 0 yards. I think teams are starting to figure that one out a little bit. So it would be a good time to kind of switch it up and roll with JSN there, who was getting carries more so before Shaheed joined the team. Koerner, pick number 3. Where are we going?
So I've been having fun attacking these like quarter by quarter props, and I'm going to go with another one here. Stephon Diggs over 5.5 third quarter receiving yards at -118 at FanDuel. I absolutely love this one. Kind of like I pointed out, where Hunter Henry is like smashing in the second quarter for the Pats. That's Diggs for the third quarter, and especially like across the league. Which makes sense. I mean, Raybon, we were trying to figure out why Henry has those splits. But Diggs coming out hot in the third quarter would make sense because like really good coaching would probably make halftime adjustments to get their best wide receiver the ball. So that's kind of, or Diggs and May have such good chemistry that they figure something out at halftime. But check out these stats for Diggs in the third quarter specifically across the league. 3.9 yards per route run rate, which is second only behind Puka Nacua. 37% target rate, leads the league, and a 36% first read rate. So they're clearly trying to get him the ball out of the gate with whatever they find out at halftime. And, there's probably a ton of noise in these. These probably regress heavily towards what you'd expect from him. But even if you do that, it's offset a bit by he's just playing way more in the playoffs. The Patriots might be in a rare trailing game script where they're going to have to throw more in the second half compared to other games. So I have him still right around 1.3 catches in the third quarter, exactly. So, 1 catch is probably the most likely outcome. His median catch is 9 yards, but 2 catches is more likely, or 2 or more catches are more likely than him, having a goose egg. So I'm showing quite a bit of value on this. I have the median closer to like 10.5 with about a 63% chance he clears 5.5. And FanDuel offers, alt overs for the third quarter. So I would take 10 plus yards at plus 146, 15 plus at plus 235, and whatever, you're comfortable with. But the third quarter is when Diggs really goes off. So give me Diggs over 5.5 third quarter receiving yards at minus 118.
Yeah, I do think it makes some sense just because, Drake May, younger quarterback, prone to scrambling a ton. So you can get back in there at halftime and kind of say, okay,
Yeah.
this is the kind of coverages they're playing. This is how we're going to get him the ball. And then maybe, he's a little less likely to just take off with it, and because there are going to be some plays that are going to kind of get him open. And to your point, I mean, he's going to play a lot more, which offsets anything, but they work, I guess, trying to maximize him early in the year, in terms of not play him a lot, but still get the maximum production. So you would guess, like, all right, coming out of halftime after you can kind of see what the defense is doing. If you're, in a competitive game, then that's when you really start ramping it up. So it makes a lot of sense. And I think this will be another one of those kind of game scripts in Seattle. I mean, Mike McDonald, he's the king of scheming. So you probably would need that half to go in and see, what they're doing and kind of regroup. So I like this Diggs play.
Yeah. I want to jump in there. I love that one too. So, 43.5, and it's not as simple as, hey, let's just take what the projection is and cut it in fourths and, kind of project it. Right. It's not that simple, but, 43.5 is what we see in the market just as his overall game yardage prop. And I have it projected higher than that. And if we're thinking of like, okay, even if all we did was just kind of create, a rough baseline of chopping that in quarters, I mean, man, we're not even getting to like the number where we kind of theoretically should be if we were just taking this one quarter at a time. And then when we're really maximizing, like, oh, hey, and this is like Stephon Diggs's power quarter too. And I think it's also explainable. It's not like it's like this random thing that like is harder to kind of like, we can conceptualize why this is the case, which I think makes it stronger as a bet. So absolutely love this one.
All right. I'll close it out with let's go with the anytime touchdown here. And it's got to be JSN. JSN anytime touchdown. You can get it as low as minus 107. And I have him with a little bit of an elevated touchdown rate, even compared to usual, because I am really high on the New England run defense, but I'm also high on the Seahawks, as, in terms of, who I think is going to prevail in this game. And so that kind of leads me to, I do think the Seahawks will have to have success throwing the football. I think JSN will be obviously king among that. And, he's had a touchdown in 10 of 19. So these odds are, kind of about fair when you look at that, that rate for the season. But if you look at the Patriots with Milton Williams out, he missed 5 games. They allowed a 4.7% rushing touchdown rate. That's, the league average is usually somewhere in the threes. So that's very high. But in the 15 games with Milton Williams in, New England's rushing touchdown rate drops to 1.2%. So that's 4 times as low. That is just and that would be way leading the league by far. So I don't think Seattle's going to have as much success, jamming it in there with Kenneth Walker. Darnold's not a big runner. For maybe they get like a long one with Shaheed or JSN on the ground, but I think the most likely thing is it's going to have to come through the air, and JSN projects to be a massive target hog in this game. I think he's the best MVP bet as well. So I love him to get in. And the fact that he could get a carry or something on the ground, that kind of increases it, increases the odds a little bit as well. So love JSN anytime touchdown at minus 107. It's hard to find value in this market. So for me, JSN is the best player who I think, in my opinion, the best player on the field in this game. All right. So that's going to do it for us here. Again, we'll have more of these. Nick Giffen and Grant Nifra will be back to give out more. And then, we'll be back, I think, one more time before it's up. And enjoy the props, Friedman. Thank you for joining us. Anything you want to shout out? Where can people find you before we get out of here?
Yeah, you can find all the work at Fantasy Life. I've got my Super Bowl breakdown there. And also, got the mock drafts already pumping out, looking ahead towards the
Oh, hell yeah.
2026 NFL draft. So it's an awesome time of year where we've got, just one more game left, but football never sleeps. The combine is just a couple of weeks away. So yeah, just check out all the draft stuff we have coming up.
All right. And yeah, you can find Koerner on X at _oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles at the free award-winning Action Network app. Go download it and follow us there if you haven't already. Again, we'll be dropping all of our prop picks for the Super Bowl right there. You can, of course, track your own as well. Until next time, let's get this money.